welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast. As we go into May, we're reminded of not only that it's Mental Health Awareness Month, but also just how far we've come, but also how far we still need to go. This month's theme is remembering our names, and to just briefly go over, we had a few. Last year, I went over the same topic, the same title, because I feel it's important to humanize those who are suffering, the people, the families attached to those who are suffering. There's an African proverb I used last month, and I think it's appropriate. A lot of times in mental health, I love this proverb, how it speaks. It says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. In mental health, we have to go with together. It's not something. And unfortunately, it's the names I feel that are given to us when we're young, when we're first, one of the first things we're given. And I feel it really adds a human element. And not to get long-winded, I want to say today we have a new guest. His name is Keeper Catran-Whitney. Is that close?
Well, let's just put it this way. The way that we're starting out is really close. Yeah.
Well,
yeah, it's Keeper Catran-Whitney. So you can just call me
Catran.
Keeper, man. It's all good.
All right. Thank you, Keeper, for coming on. I just want to give a disclaimer for those who are in the States, but also around the world. Working in the mental health field, I don't like reinventing the wheel, but if you are in crisis in the States, 988 is the suicide crisis lifeline. I do encourage you to utilize that, get professional help, or if you're just in groups, whether it's a faith-based group or just, friends that you hang out, then as adults, one of the hardest things to ask is, I need help. Basically, that's it. So I do encourage you to kind of reach out. As a kid, as we enter, I always say there's quotes, and one of the things I read when I was young was from Mark Twain, and he says it this way: he says, "Kindness is a language which the deaf can hear and the blind can see." I kind of feel when we think about mental health, when we think about this month, it means a lot of things. When I think about what comes to mind when you hear this quote from Mark Twain.
Oh, is that for?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a really excellent quote. I hadn't heard it before, and I think it's spot on. I really do, because oftentimes we think we need to be able to see and touch things, but if you're talking about emotions, you can go beyond what you're able to touch and what you're able to see. You can actually feel it, and it becomes part of your DNA. And so I think it's an excellent quote.
Yeah, and when I think about there's some the intangibles that we don't actually see with, like you're mentioning, something that we don't see like clearly, but is still important. A lot of times people who are experiencing, I don't know, disproportional feelings, let's say, I don't know, I'm angry with my friend, and I find myself get super angry that it doesn't feel it matches the situation. I find that the situation wasn't true, but that emotion's still there. I do encourage that, that emotion still there's still, even though it's not accurate in the reality, it's still something that you're struggling with, and maybe something you want to address. And I feel like there's nothing wasted when we think about ourselves and reflecting on ourselves regarding our mental health, and also what's tied to that, which wasn't tied for a long time, is substance use. Substance use is usually separated for years, but there's this idea that people realize that there's co-occurrence that can be a part of it. Someone can have both mental health and substance use issues and still need a lot of care. I know one person I keep thinking of when I think of a Mental Health Awareness Month is Robin Williams. I remember growing up, listening to Robin Williams, and he says it this way: everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind always. I feel that says a lot of things to me. What does it say to you when you hear this quote? And if you anything else you want to add?
Well, I think Robin Williams, if anyone would know what it means, it was certainly him. Because anyone who knows his story knows the challenges that he had, certainly from a mental aspect and just trying to remain grounded. So the quote that he's saying here is, you just approach people with kindness and begin there. Because all too often we see a person from a distance and we make a snap judgment about who they are, what they're capable of, what their education is, what their socioeconomic, their education, their wealth standing, all this, when it very often is not the case. There's something going on in them that they don't want people to see on the surface. So just assume that people have something going on and give them the grace and the space until you get to know them.
Yeah, and I also feel like, is it more important to appear that you're doing well or actually doing well? It's kind of a weird situation to say it that way.
Well, Robert, I think you need both.
Yeah.
Because of the very quote that Robert Williams that you just read just said, because all too often showing how you are is what educates people immediately. And yet you are trying to create this image so people will accept you. And yet what you really want them to accept is what you're going through that you don't want them to see. So it reminds me of my book Helplessness, that I just wrote, and we're going to get into it a bit. And the title Helplessness, I changed the wording from helplessness, the mental health struggles that brothers go through once we learn our sisters have been sexually abused by our parents. And I sat with that for years, the mental health trauma that we experienced. And I came to realize it wasn't about mental health. And I think it's, for most people, it's not mental health that we deal with. So I changed the wording to emotional health. And now it's helplessness, the emotional health challenges brothers experience once we learn our sisters. Because as I looked at it and examined mental health, oftentimes mental health it's a logic thing. And how people view how you need help is based on the logic of the way they're looking at it. And oftentimes means you're alone, you're isolated, you're over there. And I realized that what I went through and me and my brothers went through was emotional challenges. It wasn't mental, it was emotional. And I think that's where most people really sit with their mental health. It's more the emotional health challenges that we deal with, because we're trying to figure out a way to climb up and climb out and move forward in an empowering way. To me, emotional health, it speaks to feelings, it speaks to shared experience.
Yeah.
And it also speaks to inclusion.
Yes.
Which means you want to and need to talk to people. So I look at it as an emotional health challenge.
Yeah, and I feel one element that you mentioned, I also would say, is belonging. Belonging to something is very important. It kind of stems in, I mentioned remembering our names, but our names are attached to what we are. Like, I am a son, I am a husband, and all this stuff. And sometimes it becomes part of the groups you're a part of. Before we get into your book, what we're about to do, I just wanted to share a quote from Maya Angelou that kind of, I just want us to sit with it, and we'll talk about more later. I just love how she says it this way. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Let's go into what brought you to where you're at, Keeper, and the floor is going to be on over to you. Whatever you feel comfortable sharing. I want to tell those who are listening, watching, everything that you will want to find out more will be in the notes, so you could click and find out more about Keeper. But go ahead, Keeper. The floor is yours. Share what you feel comfortable sharing.
Oh, absolutely. First of all, Robert, thanks for having me. It is an honor to be here. My story, just so people know up front, is not an easy story at all. It's about child sexual abuse, and it can be triggering for some people. I think I need to say that right up front as we get into this. So at all costs, protect yourself as you listen to this. If you need to leave and, think about what's going on, do that by all means. It is not an easy story. So helplessness is book one of a 3-book series, from helplessness to hopefulness to happiness.
Mm,
Helplessness, as I mentioned, is the emotional health challenges brothers experience once we learn our sisters have been sexually abused by our parents.
mm,
How this all came about was in 1971.
mhm,
My family and I, we lived in South Central LA. We were very poor, incredibly poor. By the
mm,
time I moved out, I lived in 21 different places. I was
mm,
homeless 3 times.
mhm,
I went to 11 grade schools, just trying to get through education. And as we were trying to make ends meet, my mother decided she wanted to start singing. She was a very good singer, and she got together with her sister and her brother, and they started singing. But as
mm,
good as they were,
mhm,
it wasn't enough. So one day she asked us kids if we wanted to sing.
mhm.
We're like, sure. 1971, we're talking Michael Jackson, Jackson 5. Great,
Yeah.
we're doing this. I mean, it can't be that hard. So the next thing you know, we're in after hours nightclubs singing, singing
Mhm,
on the weekends, getting up, going to school, rehearsing. That was our life. We were living in the heart of gang bang city with the Crips and the Bloods and all of this at that time, and that was never our thing. We were just singing, 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 singing. So one Saturday afternoon, as we're singing, the phone rings. My mother says, "Shh," picks up the telephone. Hello, who? And then she looks at us and says, "Shh, Michael Jackson's on the phone." Yeah, that Michael Jackson
mm,
is calling our house.
mm,
Now, we could barely make a $90 a month rent. We're living on food stamps. We're going through the streets looking for bottles to turn in to get money for a bag of rice and a bag of ground beef. That's how we were living in 1971. And Michael Jackson of Jackson 5 calls our house. He has to speak to one of my younger brothers. I'm number 2 of 8 kids, 4 boys, 4 girls.
mhm,
My brother gets on the phone. Yeah, hangs up, and he screams, Michael Jackson said he's heard of me. He says for us to keep going, we should never quit, just keep going. Jump cut to 1977. Motown has just completed an exhaustive search to replace Michael Jackson and Jackson 5 after they lost him 3 years earlier to Epic Records.
mhm,
The family they chose to replace the Jackson 5, my family.
mm,
1977 was the year. It was amazing. We made the coveted Billboard magazine 3 times that year, album to singles. We were doing concerts. We were doing all the teen magazines. We were traveling. We were everywhere. We were finishing up our deal with United Artists, even though we are still poor. Just because
mhm,
you're singing and you got a record contract doesn't mean you got money. So the week we were to sign with Motown and leave United Artists, we are incredibly excited. We know it's about to go down. Motown had created the pilot TV series for us, of which I have the script. I have the physical script of it. It's something else. They had set up so many things for us to hit the ground running. We were gone. One morning, my sister screams upstairs, "Boys, come downstairs, family meeting." We come running downstairs.
mm,
When I enter the living room, my 3 youngest sisters are sitting on the couch at the far end, but they're quiet.
mm,
That's odd. They're never quiet.
mm,
They're always chatting away. They're always laughing and joking. They're always in someone's face, making jokes, teasing. That's all they ever did. My brothers and sisters and I, the 8 of us, are 8 years apart. My
mm,
mother had her first at age 16 and had all of us by the time she was 24.
mm,
She was busy. As I told her, you were always on your back. And she said, baby, I never had a headache.
mm,
No, you did not. So my 3 sisters are sitting on the couch and they're quiet. Robert, I'm like, what is going on here? We're about to have our lives change for the better. What's going on?
mm,
My 3 other brothers are also in the living room, and 2 of them are sitting at the opposite end of the couch. They're not saying a word. because they're looking around at our sisters like, how come you guys aren't happy? We're about to sign this contract. In fact, it was the largest new artist contract Motown offered any group ever. It was massive. But my brothers, like and we're looking at our sisters, why aren't you saying anything? Why is it so quiet? My oldest sister was pacing the entryway as I walked through, but she's angry, she's mad. I'm like, oh, okay, she's mad often, so that's no big deal. But earlier that day, there was a lot of banging of doors in the house. I didn't know what it was. I just knew it was my sisters. They were just doing their thing. I figured they're at each other. But you could get snippets of what they were saying because they were running into this closet or this bathroom. And it was like agitated bees. They were angry. They were mad. You can like think, what's going on here? But after a while, I didn't think much of it. It's the girls. Okay. So all 8 of us kids are in the living room. Within seconds after I go in and I sit down, my mother and stepfather enter the living room. We have a brown recliner, and my stepfather walks, turns, and sits down on the recliner, and he immediately does this. I'm like, what's going on here? This is not the occasion I think it is. What's going on?
Yeah.
My mother, who is also like our sisters, and like for the most part, all of us kids, is very bubbly, very effervescent.
Yeah.
She's stoic. Doesn't say a word. She walks to the front of the room and turns around and looks at her 8 kids. We boys, the 4 of us, are about to hear the words no brother could ever prepare for. The words no brother ever expects to hear in his life. She says, no feeling whatsoever. Your stepfather has been molesting your sisters for years. What? Wait, what did you just say? What? Me and my 3 brothers have no idea this has been happening. We have no idea we're about to hear this. But apparently this is what my sisters were talking about all morning. We need to let the boys know now before we do this deal with Motown. We need to tell them today. They need to know what has been happening. California, we are known for our earthquakes. I mean, they happen all the time.
Yeah.
Buildings crumble, freeways break, homes destroyed, trees uprooted. It happens all the time. Those things can be put back together. Little tape, a few nails, a hammer, bop, 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 is done. But emotional trauma, oh no. Oh no. At the time, I'm 16, my oldest brother is 17, and we're all still kids.
Yeah.
And we don't know what to do. Me and my brothers, we are tumbling down this abyss, this void of darkness. And we're catching snippets. I remember hearing this sister's name, and I'm hearing liquor store, and I'm hearing, did she say apartment? How long did she say? Wait, what? It just would not stop. The PTSD was just washing over me. Then my mother drops earthquake number 2. She says, I have known all along. No, you have known all along and you did nothing? The emotional trauma, we are being pounded, me and my brothers, because for my sisters, as they were talking about it and saying we need to tell the boys today, unfortunately, they already knew the story because they had been living the story. They were the story. They were already the victims for years. Me and my brothers just didn't know about it. And just because you don't know about something like this is happening in your house doesn't mean you are not being affected by it.
Yeah.
If it's impacting relationships between you and your sisters and you have no idea why they're reacting when you say something or do something, or just an innocent joke, you don't know why they're doing what they're doing. All you know is like, what? I didn't say anything. What are you doing? We're just having fun, but you don't know they are in severe trauma.
Yeah.
They're in severe fear.
Yeah.
As bad as those two things were for me and my brothers, earthquake number 3 was by far the worst, because it was an earthquake that locked me down for 45 years and locked my brothers down for the same length of time, and a couple are still dealing with it. Our oldest sister turned around and pointed at her 4 innocent brothers and said, "You can't talk about it. It didn't happen to you. It only happened to us girls. You boys can't talk about it ever." And like that, relationships between brothers and sisters that were so incredibly tight, they were broken on the living room floor. It is often said, and you can ask any family this and they'll echo the same thing: no one can break our family apart. We go outside, no one can tear us apart. I mean, we are solid. We will stand up for each other. There's absolutely no one and no group that can break us apart. And that is usually true. What is also usually true is what breaks you apart is not typically from the outside, it's from the inside. So here you've got 4 boys who have just been hit with this emotional earthquake. Bam, 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 3 times. And what are we supposed to do about it? There's no help. Unfortunately, for women and girls, there are millions of articles, there are books, there are documentaries, there are TV shows, there are support groups, there are tools, there are all these things in place to help women and girls who have been affected by sexual abuse. But for boys, absolutely nothing. Our feelings are shunted to the side. No one ever asks, are we okay? Do we need to talk? Is there anything you need? But as a brother, what you hear is, how come you didn't hear me crying? How come you didn't see my weeping? How could you not know? How come? Of all of that, on top of it, the news was devastating. It broke us. We lived through this for decades. And to this day, there's really nothing out there that addresses the needs of brothers. I've spoken to hundreds of men, and it took me 10 years to write Helplessness because it was so hard. It's dark, it's gritty, it's ugly. As a brother, you go to this place where you start to imagine what your sisters, 5 and 6 years old, went through. It becomes very vivid, these imaginings. You imagine, as I did, your stepfather pulling your 5 and 6 year old sisters into a closet. And you imagine just a zip. You hear the sound of the zipper going down, and you know what happens next. You hear in your mind the sounds of him pulling your oldest sister into a bedroom and pants dropping, doing this, fingers and hands going everywhere. That's what we hear. And as we are carrying this, we realize very quickly the people we needed to speak to the most, our sisters, just told us they wanted nothing to do with us. So where you have, unfortunately, reams of articles, and I say unfortunately because that means historically women have gone through so much when it comes to sexual abuse or child sexual abuse. There's so much out there. But when you're a brother, where do you go? What do you do? Who do you speak to? Just we were found guilty by our sisters through gender proximity. It was that simple. Because what was between our stepfather's legs, we are also carrying the same equipment. So you're obviously very guilty. But the process of child sexual abuse means no one else is to know. And they being my mother and my stepfather, the most powerful people we know on the planet. No one comes close. There's no cop. There's no military general that's more powerful than them in our eyes. They are the most powerful people we know. So when they do this to their children follow orders. Don't talk. Don't tell your brothers. Don't tell your aunts. Don't tell your uncles. Don't tell anyone. That's what my sisters did. And my mother empowered and protected him. When I share this story, when I do speaking, which I do a lot of speaking on this, I'm giving voice. I'm elevating the voice of brothers in the conversation around child sexual abuse where there is none today. Granted, we have a lot of men who are now finally starting to talk about their personal sexual abuse and their damage, but there's also the collateral damage, and that's the brothers. You know what I'm saying? There is, like I said, we are pushed over to the side. No, you stay over here. Your feelings don't matter. And I get what my sister was doing. She's protecting herself. She's protecting her three little sisters as she should.
Yeah.
But when we boys were told we can't talk, what we heard was our feelings don't matter. Our voices don't matter. We don't matter. And we take that with us as we go forward. The journey to finding my self-esteem, finding my self-worth, getting back to my sisters was a very long, arduous, and difficult journey, because in the process, we decided, some of us, we are contractually bound to finish out this contract, and it was the only way we could eat. So we decided, let's try to keep going and figure this out, because our mother said she would handle it. She would put him out, which she did for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. And then she brought him back in. And we're all trying to figure out, what do you do with this? What do you do with this? And many people will tell you, dude, if that was me, I would have done this. I would have gotten up and did that. Or they'll tell my sisters who have heard this many times, girl, I would have done this. I would have done that. Noise.
Yeah.
Just all noise. It's commentary. Because unless you are in that situation, you don't know what you would do. And we all know that when adults hear this kind of thing, they don't know what to do. They are stymied. They are emotionally paralyzed.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out what to do. How do I keep my family together? How do I make this happen? How do I do this? Well, in our case, it was multiple. It was multiplied 8 times. So what do you do? Becomes the question for brothers, because in the process, if you're trying to figure out what to do, and our mother saying she's going to handle it, as time goes by, you realize there's a betrayal taking place. That for the brothers and for me, what do we do? How am I supposed to handle this, knowing that our sisters still need help? And it's help we don't know how to give. And we also know we need help. We need conversations. We need people coming to help us as well. So there's not only the betrayal for my mother and stepfather with our sisters, and then with me and my brothers, there also begins this thing, because we are told we can't talk to them by our sisters. you know that you want to do something,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's a sense of betrayal. So oftentimes women, when and as I said, I do a lot of speaking on this, trying to bring rise to the voices of brothers. They'll say, well, it really didn't happen to you. It happened to your sisters. And I said, it does happen to us.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, because as soon as we hear about it, we are now part of the trauma.
Yeah.
As soon as we learn about it, it becomes part of our DNA as well. And many of them will say to me, well, Keeper, but it's still just your sisters, until I tell them. 6 years prior to my sisters, in 1966,
Mm-hmm.
my older brother and I were sexually abused by our babysitter almost daily for 6 months.
Mm.
And then they say, yeah, I understand both sides of the child sexual abuse coin. I understand the damage side,
Mm-hmm.
and I understand the collateral damage side.
Mm-hmm.
Not something that I'm proud of, but it is the reality. So it cannot be a conversation between men and women when we're trying to say, whose trauma is worse.
Yeah.
The trauma is the trauma.
Exactly.
And individually, we all absorb it in very different ways. So my mission is to bring brothers into the conversation. When all the other people are having their conversations and they take that momentary pause to inhale and catch their breath, brothers, we need to step into that gap and say, look, we need help as well. We need tools. We need systems as well. Because I've experienced too many times where the trauma just washes over
Mm-hmm.
me. And so that is I would say, the quick part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
But it has taken a long time.
I just want to say I really appreciate and inspired by your courage to come here and share this. I would say a lot of times, I never feel it ever works well when people are comparing how bad their trauma is to others. Because trauma, like you said, is trauma. I remember when I was in New Jersey, there was a murder suicide. The father shot the mom and shot himself in front of the whole family. I knew this family, and one of the things is the kids were affected. The neighborhood was affected. The community was affected. So the ripple effect that happens when things like this happen that you can't explain. I know it's different. However, those people needed help too. The people who are left behind, and I do appreciate your courage and what you're inspired to do, because a lot of times in my work, the biggest thing is people don't feel heard. I can't imagine when you can't speak for what you're going through, you and your brothers. So again, I appreciate you sharing this with us. Can you tell me what inspired you to write the book? I know you took a long time, but you kept going. What inspired you to keep trying to finish the book?
What kept me going was there were times when I coulda, woulda, shoulda done something for my sisters.
Mm-hmm.
And as I began thinking about those times, for instance, my mother said she was going to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the betrayal for me was I took her at face value. I took her at her word. I took her at her word for 9 years. Because the reality was it was safe. Yeah. It was comfortable. It meant I didn't have to do anything. I could continue just doing whatever I wanted to do. But during those 9 years, each day, each moment is a betrayal of my sisters. It is a betrayal of my brothers. It is a betrayal of me. But it was a warm blanket, and I was more than happy to get under it. So 3 months before my wedding in 1986, I just could not stop thinking about what I was going to leave my sisters with. There's my mom. My mom was still seeing this guy, and I'm like, no, I cannot get married and leave him around them. 2 of my sisters moved out and a couple did not. But I couldn't do it. So one Friday night, I'm talking to my fiance, my wife, who I'm still married to. It's been 38 years.
Congratulations.
Thanks. And I said, I've got to go back home this weekend. I've got to handle something. And she said to me, everything okay? And I'm like, yeah, everything's okay. But Robert, I'm in a very, very dark place at this point. I am an emotional ticking time bomb, but I'm keeping it together as most men do. We do our best to keep our emotions in check, which is a dangerous place to be.
Yeah.
Especially what I was carrying at that time. She said, can you tell me what's going on? I said, no, I'll let you know when I come back. So I go to the house that Saturday afternoon, the next day, and my old bedroom is still there, still got some of my stuff in it, and I know what I have to do. I know what needs to be done. Uncles wouldn't help. Aunts wouldn't help. Grandparents wouldn't help. Friends wouldn't help. So I know what has to be done. I go into the bedroom and I just wait. It's a summer evening, but it's really nice and cool. It's incredibly pleasant. Open the windows and the wind is blowing in. It is soothing. But I am drenched in sweat. I am pouring because I know what I have to do. I love playing softball. It's one of my favorite sports. And I had propped my favorite baseball bat against the door jamb. And I'm just pacing the room back and forth. Okay, you know what you got to do. You're doing this for your sisters. You know what has to happen. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. You'll be all right. You'll be all right. I had decided that my life was forfeit that Saturday night. It was done. And I was good with it because I was going to protect my sisters. So I'm in the bedroom, and the only other bedroom on the second floor is my mother and my stepfather's bedroom. And I hear them in their bedroom. And I also hear him beating on my mom. I hear her getting knocked against the wall. She's being hit and she bumps up against a dresser. The perfume bottles are clinking and clanking all over the place. And you hear one crash, another one crash. And I'm thinking, okay, you can do this, but he's so much bigger than you. You could do this another day. Oh, yeah, you can do this another time. But you're getting married in 3 months. You've got to do this now. And I get scared, and then I start to think of my sisters. I start imagining what he has done to them. Once again, where he pulled them into the closet, the bedroom, taking him to his brother's apartment, doing this, buying them liquor and buying them soda at a liquor store and spiking it. You can do this. You can do this. You have to do this. You owe them this. So I'm waiting for their bedroom door, to open. And after a couple of hours, I hear creak. That's it. It's now. I hear their door open, and I hear footsteps start to go across the hall. Thunk, thunk, thunk. I get up. I put my hand on the baseball bat. And I say, no, wait a minute. I open the door and I peek out, and there he is walking toward the stairs. My door is right at the foot of the stairs. Go to the top of the stairs, make a left, there's my door. Their bedroom is about 30 feet away. And I look out, and there he is. And I decide, now, do it now. I step out of my bedroom and I look at him. And he says, "Hey, how you doing?" And I'm just looking at him.
Mm-hmm.
At some point during me looking at him, comprehension just dawns on his face.
Mm-hmm.
And his eyes narrow and he starts to look. He knows something is wrong. I come out of the bedroom and I start to walk toward him. I know, because I planned this, where I have to be when we have this conversation. Our hallway overlooks the stairs. There's about a 3.5-foot wall
Mm-hmm.
overlooking the stairs. And I know, okay, we're probably going to meet somewhere there. When we meet there, my back cannot be to that short wall, because all he has to do is, and I'm tumbling.
Yeah.
At the bottom of the stairs, neck snaps, I'm dead.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm still kind of good with that because he's still going to jail. So my sisters no longer have to deal with him. He's just committed a homicide, committed murder. Purposely knocked me over. I had no weapon in my hand, did not bring the bat with me. But I know I can't be there. So as I walk toward him, now keep in mind, Robert, my stepdad is 6'6", 250 pounds. He wore this massive afro wig that put his height over 7 feet tall. I'm 5'8", 145 pounds. When I stand next to him, I cannot look over his shoulders. My face comes to his chest. It's like right here. I'm about to take on this mountain of a man, knowing that one or two things is going to happen. One of us is going to kill the other. This is ending. It is over. All the molestations, all the beatings. My sisters and brothers will never have to deal with this man again. And there is, and you no doubt have experienced this in your work, there is the warpedness of it. Because here I am thinking I'm about to get rid of the problem, but now I be creating even greater emotional problem for my sisters. Why did I say something? All I had to do was be quiet. He's gone, he's gone, he's gone. That never crossed my mind. I just knew he had to be killed. Period. I did not tell anybody what I was going to do. Not one sister, not one brother. This was me handling it because my failure as a brother was just too great. So he and I start to come closer and closer together until we are face to face, or face to chest, in my case. I look up at him and he's looking down at me, and I say, "You have 24 hours to leave this house. If you are still here by this time tomorrow, you will be dead because I will have killed you." I turn around and I walk back toward my bedroom, shaking, scared. But I know my favorite baseball bat is there waiting for me to call on it at any moment. It is there. I close the door and I hear footsteps. Thump, thump, thump. And I'm like, oh, okay. Here we go. One of us is done tonight. If he kills me, he's going to jail. If I kill him, I'm going to jail. I'm going to the gas chamber. California still had the gas chamber at that time for premeditated murder. But my sisters are good. It wasn't making any sense. I was in this emotional health trauma. This had nothing to do with mental. This was emotional. I needed to protect my sisters because to be a brother for me means to protect the honor of your sisters. That's what it means to be a brother. And I had already failed. I wasn't failing again. As I'm listening to the footsteps, they start to fade. I'm like, okay, he's walking away. He's going back to their bedroom. Okay, but he's got 24 hours. So I have to come back here tomorrow
Mm.
and make sure he's gone. So I get up and I leave my bedroom, go downstairs, go outside, bring my bat with me, hop into my little orange Fiat X19,
Mm-hmm.
go to my fiance's house. She asked if everything's okay. I said, I will know tomorrow. She said, you still can't tell me. I'm like, no, I can't. Now, I didn't even tell her.
Mm-hmm.
We're about to get married in 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
But I am in such a dark place. I didn't tell her.
Mm-hmm.
So she would have had trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Her future husband would be dead or in jail going to his death.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't tell her to, quite frankly, until 10 years ago, what I had done. I go back to the house the next day. I've got my bat in my hand. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to get down. I'm ready to do what is ever necessary. So I walk to the house and then I get ready to open the door and I say to myself, you know what, let me leave the bat outside.
Mm-hmm.
I do not want to aggravate the situation any more than it is already aggravated. I've just threatened this man. Men don't, this is not junior high school. It's not elementary school with boys. When men do these things, it's always life and death, period.
Mm-hmm.
So I leave the bat outside, rested against the door jamb outside the house, the front door.
Mm-hmm.
And I go in and I'm expecting to see a gun pointed right in my face.
Mm-hmm.
I step in. There's no gun. There's not even him. The house is quiet.
Mm-hmm.
I go into the living room. No one's here. Go into the dining room. No one's in there. Go to the bottom of the stairs. I don't hear anything. Huh. Go into the kitchen. What's that sound? In the back of the house, we had a makeshift studio where we would do some of our pre-recording stuff before we went into the studio.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back there, and my younger brother is back there. And I opened the door, and I asked, is our stepdad here? And he says, no, he left. He left last night. I said, he hasn't come back. He said, no. He did not come back. He was gone. So there's so much more to this, because there were 3 months later. I wasn't talking to my mom at the time, but I'm trying to create some sort of relationship with her.
Mm-hmm.
And I start to move into this Stockholm syndrome phase.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell her, I said, look, I want you to understand, I want to have a relationship with you. And I'm going to say this, but I want to be very, very clear when I say this. I do not want him at my wedding, period. We do not want him. But I'm going to leave that to you. So I'm thinking I'm offering this olive branch. But she says, okay, I'm going to do the right thing finally. I'm finally going to do something good for my kids. I said, so what are you going to do? She says, give me a couple of days to think about it. I knew what she was going to do. I try to be a man of my word. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. 3 months later, he's standing in our wedding because she invited him. And so the brother who got rid of him is responsible for putting him back in front of his sisters. It is the greatest regret of my life, because I'm trying to create a sense of we can still have relationships with each other during those 3 months. Even though my sisters did not know what I did, they did not know what I did till maybe 5 years ago. Almost 50 years after it happened, they're like, you did that? I'm like, yeah, because I didn't tell anyone. I didn't think it was necessary. I did what needed to be done. But here I am. And I'm like, you, in an effort to make things okay, you made things worse. Again, you brought them trauma again. You did this. The guy who's so intent on helping and saving them. What were you thinking? And that sent out a new cascade of trauma and triggering for all of us. You mentioned something about names, and I think you are absolutely correct. When my son was born, my mother had given us the name of our stepfather when she married him. And names are absolutely critical. I think they carry a energy with them from ancestral energy. They can lift you up in times of need. They can make you feel that you are a part of something greater. So when my son was born, he had the same last name, which, at the time it was Catran-Parent, not Catran-Whitney. Parent is my stepdad's last name. And things started to get so challenging for me that whenever I saw his name on a school paper, a report card, I would see the name Parent and I would get mad. And I started to feel and could pick up, I was transferring some of that name energy to my innocent son. And I'm like, no, he has nothing to do with this. But that's part of the trauma. Because whenever I saw the name, it reminded me not only of what he did and my mom did, but it also reminded me of my failure. Of what I didn't do. It reminded me of constantly, you can't talk about it. You can't do anything about it. It didn't happen to you. Well, of course it did. So eventually I changed the last name to Whitney. My mother's family, we love our mother's family, my aunts and uncles. So we took their name, not in honor of my mother, but in honor of my mother's family. So that's where Catran-Whitney comes from. This story is it's not a rare story. It's not a unique story. There are upwards of 44 million people, adults, who have been sexually abused walking in the United States alone every day. And 1 in 6 children are sexually abused. And oftentimes we think of sexual abuse, child sexual abuse, if it only happening to girls. Well, almost close to 20% of all child sexual abuse happens to boys. But the narrative is not controlled it's not a male-dominated narrative. Women control the narrative. And well, they should. Absolutely. Because as my brother likes to say something about, very similar to what Robin Williams said, as a man, you should just assume off the bat that every woman you have run into has been abused in some way. Just assume it. And start with them from there. Start with them from the standpoint, I need to listen. I need to just slow down. I need to show them respect. Because I don't know their story. I don't know. Because even though guys, we have our thing, and we're by no means clean of trauma, compared to women, come on. And oftentimes we will do things that trigger and we don't know about it. I had an opportunity to finally clean things up and bring some closure for my sister in 2019. And that's how the book Helplessness ends. But Helplessness, it is about the trauma brothers experience, what we learn and the things that we go through, and how we try to find our way back to our sisters, and how, more importantly, we try to find our way back to who we are, the men that we want to be, the men that we envisioned ourselves to be, not the men that we think we are. Those are two different things, The reality is we carry a lot of pain, we carry a lot of trauma, and because of the structure of society, we are oftentimes not allowed to do it. The reason why we're not allowed to do it is because men have set up this structure.
Mm-hmm.
Boys don't cry, men are tough, we can handle anything. No, we can't.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've got the yin and the yang, we've got the male female energy, and both sides need to be taken care of. Both sides need to be shown love and grace. And sometimes your energy is more male dominant, and sometimes it's more female dominant. One side, it could be more of a one of nurturing and caring, which is more oftentimes viewed from female perspective. And one could be hunt, handle this, protect this, and that's oftentimes more a male dominated energy. But we have them all. We have the capacity for all of it, and we live through all of it. So one of the things that I have come to know in going through this and writing this book, and even starting Hopefulness, which I'm doing now, which is about the search for how do you find hope in the midst of all of this.
Mm-hmm.
With my books, including Helplessness, 3 of my sisters contribute to the book. 2 of my brothers, which is unheard of, that the sisters would now contribute to the book that their brother has written about the family sexual trauma. But my family, we believe that our experience does not have to end in tragedy, as so many do. It can be used to help educate. It can be used to inform law enforcement, teachers, families, brothers, sisters, the therapists. Just look, this gives you a deep dive, heavy into it. And so we have no intention of our story being left on the dunghill as so many other families over the history of humanity, where they lie. We are used to think that our story was going to be one of music, being great. I don't think so. I think my family was brought here to go through all of this so we could share this and help others. Because in the United States, 160 children a day, unique children a day, report child sexual abuse. That's every day. Those are the reported ones. So last night, 160 kids went to bed. One little boy and a little girl, at around 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, someone came in their door, their bedroom door. It will happen tonight, and it will happen to at least 160 kids tomorrow. And who will get the lion's share of the attention and the support? It's oftentimes will be the girls, it'll be the women, and men. Now that we're finally starting to talk about this, we're seeing more and more celebrities, be them actors or athletes or high profile individuals, talking about their personal experience with child sexual abuse, but you never hear what the brothers go through, what we have to do with it. We just walk around and we carry all this shame and trauma and guilt, trying to figure out what to do because we can't talk to our sisters about it. So at the end of the day, be it you a man or a woman, a brother or a sister, we all want the same things. We all want to be heard. We want to be seen. We all want to be understood.
Yeah.
Because we all want to go forward with our life in a positive direction every day. And unless you at least start with the first 3 things of the healing process, and that's number 1, accepting the fact that you are a victim, which is difficult for men. But without that acceptance, you can't even, the chances of healing is minuscule. You have to just accept, I'm a victim, and now I'm in the survivor. Because this becomes part of something we talked about very early on, was it becomes part of our DNA. It is in us. This is in our marrow at this point. And like DNA, PTSD will manifests itself in ways we don't even recognize or even know that's going on. And oftentimes when it comes to sexual abuse and child sexual abuse, it impacts your relationships, not only with your sisters, for brothers that is, but it impacts every relationship with every woman that you know. And be them co-workers, be them friends, be them aunts, mothers, grandparents. It impacts that.
Yeah.
So you need to recognize it is part of you. And even once the healing process starts and you get to a place where you think it's over, it's never gone.
Yeah.
The trauma does not disappear. It's there. You try to put it in a place where it's manageable so you can be positive. And so what follows that, once you're able to recognize and accept who you are, you've got to be able to find someone to talk to.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I talked to one of my sisters and told her what I wanted to do. I was going to write a book about it, knowing that she was going to scream bloody murder, don't you dare. But her response was 180 degrees from that. Her response was, of course you should write a book. All you boys should write a book. You all have a story, and other men need to know what other brothers have experienced. Even the sister who told me you can't talk about it ever, I called her. Oh my gosh. I did not want to call her. It took me 30 minutes and multiple times to pick up the telephone because the phone just felt so heavy. I kept coming up with excuses. I would dial, then I'd hang up, come up with excuses. Oh, no. My favorite excuse was I needed to go outside and watch paint dry. It was real important that I watch the paint dry before I talked to her. But once I finally did, about 15 years ago, she did not blow up at me, which really stunned me because she was so angry. She was so adamant that I never talked to them about it. And she said, yeah, you should write a book. Because you're not writing a book that's a tell-all, blah, blah, blah. You're trying to help people. You're trying to save other girls from the trauma that we went through. You should write a book. And it wasn't so much that I was going to them for permission. I was going to let them know this is coming because I felt I owed them that. But then I got all the love and support and encouragement to keep going. It was like, wow. And it's because I started talking to them.
Yeah.
And too bad we didn't talk a lot earlier.
I just want to mention, such an inspiring story, but also I know a very hard story for you to share. There's this one quote from Brené Brown that came to mind when you were talking. Vulnerability sounds like truth, feels like courage. Truth and courage aren't always comfortable, but they're never weakness. I commend you for sharing. I also wanted to share this one, and kind of remind me when you were talking. This one, Jonathan Harnish, she says, the strongest people are not those who show strength in front of the world, but those who fight and win battles that others do not know anything about. You're sharing that story with people so they know that they're not alone. I do appreciate and I commend you on all the great work you're doing. I just want to ask you as we wrap up, any final thoughts? It's wonderful having you on and sharing your story. We're gonna, those who are listening, those who are watching, you'll find out anything you want, find out more about his books and how to find out more will be in the notes. But any final thoughts as we wrap up, Keeper? Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, I once again I appreciate you having me. The thoughts that I would like to leave with men and especially brothers is you're not alone. You are not alone in what you're feeling. I know you want to talk. I know you want to reconnect with your sisters. I know this, but you're not alone. It is okay, but try to find someone who you can talk to, someone who will just listen and not judge you. And once you start to talk, you'll realize that a lot of the shackles of your trauma and pain just start to fold away. They just start to fall away because what's keeping you in check are those fears that someone's going to find out. How come you didn't do something? A lot of that noise, sort of talk that I mentioned earlier. But you're not alone. There are safe places, and hopefully with conversations like this, we'll begin to create tools and systems that also help brothers.
I just want to say thank you for sharing your insight, your story. It's an inspiration. I just want to share with those who are listening to stay updated with Revive Ministries through the various platforms. ReviveMinistriesFL.com is our website. I'm leaving you with this last quote. It's from Malcolm S. Forbes. He says, "Too many people overvalue what they are not and undervalue what they are."